Hey guys, tonight we drift way back, so far back, in fact, that the continents aren't even where you'd expect them, and the air still doesn't know what to do with itself. You're floating now in a world that isn't quite ocean, isn't quite atmosphere, and definitely isn't fit for human lungs. Below you, the seas shimmer with soft pulses of bioluminescence. There are no fish, no plants, just gelatinous forms drifting through a salty void jellyfish, comb jellies, and microbial mats carpeting the seafloor like gooey wallpaper. You're not asleep yet, but the idea of sleep? That's already starting to form somewhere between the soft rhythm of the tides and the flickering pulses inside ancient, brainless creatures. That's right. We're about to explore what it means to rest when you don't even have a brain to rest in the first place. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself drifting among the earliest known animal creatures like Ediacaran biota, squishy, quilt-patterned life forms that look like someone spilled lasagna on the ocean floor. These ancient oddities lived over 600 million years ago and had no eyes, no mouths, and probably no way to complain about Mondays. But did they rest? Well, scientists think they might have not sleep as we know it, not dreams or snoring, but something rhythmic, a metabolic pause, like switching off a light to save energy. Picture a giant, wet leaf just pulsing slower for a while. If that doesn't make you feel sleepy, I don't know what will. Now fast forward just a little to the Cambrian period, around 540 million years ago. This is when life explodes into diversity. Still no fish, but now you've got trilobites skittering along the seafloor and early worms burrowing into the muck like tired commuters heading into tiny, oozy subways. These creatures had nervous systems. Tiny ones, sure, but enough to process stimuli and maybe even decide when to shut down for the night. One quirky tidbit: some jellyfish today still show signs of sleep despite not having brains. A 2017 study on Cassiopeia, a type of upside-down jellyfish, showed that they enter low-activity periods and respond more slowly to pokes during those times. In jellyfish terms, that's the equivalent of ignoring your alarm clock. Historians, well, in this case, biologists and evolutionary theorists still argue whether this kind of proto-sleep is the same as what we mammals do. Is it sleep if there are no dreams? Is it rest if there's no awareness? Philosophers could spiral on this for hours, but here in the soft ocean dark, it feels like the beginning of something deeply familiar. You imagine being one of them drifting near the surface, letting gravity do the work. There's no day or night you can really track yet. The sun exists, sure, but light only penetrates so far, and your photoreceptors, if you even have those, are still figuring out what brightness means. Rest isn't a choice. It's more like a default state. If you're not feeding or fleeing, you're conserving. The ocean is warm, in a microbial kind of way. The surface is a soup of single-celled plankton. Below, thick mats of bacteria bubble up tiny oxygen pockets. These were some of Earth's earliest oxygenators. You wouldn't want to swim in it, but it's home. Back then, the Earth's day was only about 22 hours long. The planet spun faster, and tides came and went more frequently. So, if early life was using environmental cues to determine when to rest, those cues were wilder and more chaotic than today's tidy 24-hour circadian rhythm. Imagine trying to sleep through 2 sunsets a day unless you're a jellyfish, in which case you just gently go into power-saving mode and let the current rock you. Now, you might ask, what was the point of rest when there were no predators yet? The answer, probably, was energy. In the primordial buffet of life, calories were hard to come by. If you weren't absorbing sunlight or filtering nutrients, your best bet was to go into a kind of metabolic stasis. Even bacteria have sleep-like states. The idea that really pausing, might have survival value, that's as old as life itself. And here's a fringe theory for you. Some researchers speculate that sleep as a structured behavior could have emerged not from the top down from brains, but from the bottom up, as cells themselves developed repair cycles and synced them to external rhythms like temperature shifts and light. Basically, your mitochondria might be the real inventors of nap time. By the way, you're not alone in this jellyfish sea. Floating nearby is Dickinsonia, a flat-ribbed, pancake-shaped organism the size of a doormat. No brain, no bones, but still possibly living its best life on a microbial mat. Does it sleep? No one knows. But if you could touch it, it would feel like a half-deflated beach ball soaked in warm tea. You're welcome for that mental image. So, here we are, before the first fish, before the first yawn, floating through a planet of gelatin and silence. Sleep is still a mystery wrapped in soft tissue and algae. But it's already here in some form. Not as a dream, not as REM, but as stillness in the tide, a gentle rhythm pulsing through life before life knows what it is. And you're just along for the float. You're still suspended in that early ocean, drifting lazily just above the microbial mats. But now, the scene is changing slowly, yet profoundly. Time slips forward by tens of millions of years, and the ocean starts to look a bit more like a place you might recognize. Not exactly swim-ready, but less like a primordial soup, and more like a buzzing tide pool of bizarre life. Still no fish, but vertebrates are lurking just over the horizon. You coast past trilobites, now tiny armored pancakes with pinprick eyes and frantic little legs. These guys are early arthropods, and they ruled the Cambrian and Ordovician seas like anxious little beetle overlords. Some of them rolled into tight spirals when threatened. Others scuttled through silt like nervous vacuum cleaners. Did they sleep? Well, probably. Or at least they entered sleep-like states. They had primitive brains, and more importantly, they had patterns, daily patterns, movement cycles, feeding windows. That's always a clue. Sleep, or something like it, likely evolved as a way to balance being alert and not using up your battery too fast. Imagine being a trilobite. Your vision is kaleidoscopic, your world all motion and light. You spend your waking hours grazing on algae or detritus, then pause, letting the silt settle over your shell as your legs go still. A kind of prehistoric nap. It's not cute, it's strategic. And here's where it gets a little weird. Some trilobite fossils show them preserved in lines, one after the other like a conga line frozen in time. Paleontologists aren't sure why. Mating behavior? Migration? Or get this kind of resting procession, a sleepy commute under the waves? Historians still argue whether these formations are evidence of complex social behavior or just the result of a sudden mudslide hitting a very poorly timed party. By this point in evolution, eyes are getting more sophisticated. That matters because light becomes one of the earliest sleep regulators. It's called circadian rhythm now, but back then, it was more like bright means danger, dark means chill. Creatures started syncing rest periods to the rise and fall of light. Daylight didn't mean tanning and smoothies, it meant predators could see you. Best to stay hidden and still when the sun's up, if you could. As the Ordovician period rolls in, the oceans become more structured. coral-like reefs begin to form, and the food web gets more complex. Now you have to time your movement shunt. When others sleep, sleep when others hunt. You can almost feel the social clock ticking into existence. Some animals burrow, others cling to rocks. Rest happens in crevices, under the soft fuzz of algae. You imagine yourself as a worm, curling deep into a cool tube of calcium carbonate, waiting for a change in current or temperature to nudge you awake. If you're lucky, nothing comes looking for you in the dark. One fringe theory floating around is that early rest behavior was tied to tide cycles more than sunlight, especially for intertidal species. Twice a day, the water retreats, and with it goes your safety. You'd better freeze in place, conserve your moisture, and wait for the sea to come back. That's not quite sleep, but it's a rehearsal for it, a tidal siesta. And here's a quirky fact to pad your pillow with. Horseshoe crabs often, called living fossils still, follow ancient tidal sleep patterns, syncing their movements with the moon's pull. They've been doing this for over 400 million years. So, while you might need melatonin gummies and a podcast to fall asleep, they just need a high tide and a little moonlight. Zoom out now, Earth from orbit. The continents are starting to clump. The supercontinent Gondwana sprawls across the southern hemisphere, its coastlines peppered with tidal flats. These are noisy, gassy, places full of farty mud and microbial hiss, but they're the stage for some of life's first coordinated quiet hours. And with that, here comes the Silurian. Still no fish as we know them, but early jawless vertebrates start squiggling onto the scene. Cephalaspis, with its flattened head shield, moves sluggishly through the water like a cautious Roomba. It has a brain, a spinal cord, a reason to rest between foraging. Did it dream of electric algae? We'll never know, but we do know this. Brains need breaks, even small ones. Today, scientists can look at brainwaves in sleeping animals and map those patterns backward. There's a decent chance that some form of slow-wave sleep non-REM, basic neural cleanup duty, was already happening in these early vertebrates. Not for memory, not for REM theater, but just to reset the system. Clear the cache. Reboot the trilobite-chasing machine. And if you're wondering when the first yawn might have happened, well, that's still up for debate. Yawning is deeply linked to cooling the brain and signaling social cues. So, no one's sure if the earliest vertebrates did it. But hey, if you're underwater with no eyelids and no vocal cords, a yawn probably doesn't make the same impression. Back in your jellyfish float mode, you try to imagine what sleep even means without beds, blankets, or bedtime stories. Here, rest is about energy conservation. It's about dodging danger. It's about hiding in plain sight by doing absolutely nothing and doing it well. So next time someone calls you lazy for napping, remind them you're just honoring a billion-year tradition that started with jelly blobs and armored worms. The Devonian period dawns, and with it comes a flood of new shapes, fins, and problems. You glide through turquoise water thick with algae, dodging bony fish with startled eyes and mouths that open like coin purses. Now, at last, fish, existrial fish, with jaws. And their arrival changes everything, including how sleep fits into the busy schedule of staying alive. This is the age of fishes, and suddenly the ocean is a very competitive place. You're surrounded by armored placoderms lumbering tanks with shearing jaw plates and sleek early sharks like Cladocelok, moving with unnerving grace. Rest, if it happens, has to be strategic. You can't be too slow, too obvious, or too trusting. In the dark recesses of coral reefs, smaller fish tuck themselves into rocky crevices, their bright colors muted by moon-filtered waters. They hold still, gills fluttering gently, eyes wide open. That's one of the strange things about many fish, they don't close their eyes when they sleep. No eyelids, just a frozen gaze and slower swimming. If you're looking for snoring or drool, this is not your era. But rest does happen here. In fact, fish brains show unmistakable patterns of sleep. There's a behavioral sleep-produced movement, lower responsiveness, and sometimes even cycles. Goldfish in tanks? They sleep. Zebrafish have REM-like patterns. And although the Devonian fish aren't leaving sleep diaries, their descendants give us clues. Historians still argue whether sleep among early fish was structured in the way we think of it today, with stages, cycles, and dreams, whether it was more like a flickering screensaver turning on when energy dipped. But they likely had some form of shutdown mode. Fish are incredibly efficient, and anything wasteful gets trimmed by evolution fast. Sleep has to earn its keep. Now picture this. A lungfish, one of the weirdest animals to ever swim a swamp. It can breathe air, burrow into mud, and survive for months without food. During droughts, it curls into a mucus-lined cocoon underground and slows its metabolism to a near halt. Not quite sleep, not quite hibernation, more like pressing pause on life. It's a dramatic flex and also a clue, because the line between sleep, torpor, hibernation, and death is fuzzier than we like to admit. Your body slows down, your brain stops chattering, and you wait. You float in darkness and silence, trusting the world to be kind when you wake up. Here's your quirky tidbit of the night. Modern parrotfish, who descend from ancestors that once swam these ancient seas, produce a sort of mucus bubble around themselves before they sleep. It's like a biological sleeping bag. This slimy cocoon masks their scent from predators, essentially a stealth blanket. Cozy, right? If only it didn't smell like low tide. Up above, the land is waking up. Plants are growing taller, insects are buzzing around ferns, and some brave vertebrates begin to wobble their way onto shore. Tiktaalik is the name of one of these pioneersa fish with stubby fins and a flexible neck. It hauls itself out of the water like someone trying to sneak across a wet kitchen floor in socks. It's not sleeping on land yet, but it's thinking about it. Which brings us to a crossroads in the history of sleep. In water, gravity is gentle. There's always oxygen around if you keep moving. But land? Land is harsh, dry, noisy. You need lungs. You need eyelids. You need places to hide. And sleep in this new frontier has to evolve all over again. Imagine being one of the first creatures to nap on land. You're exposed, slow, and edible. You curl under a leaf, heart thudding, nostrils dry, hoping your stillness makes you invisible. No one's singing lullabies here. The rhythm of sleep is set by temperature, threat, and instinct. It's possible, though not confirmed, that some of these early land vertebrates slept like amphibians do now, with half their brains staying alert. That's called unihemispheric sleep, and it's popular among birds and aquatic mammals today. One eye open, half a brain on patrol. You'd sleep like that too, if every shadow might be a mouth. And here's a dreamy little wrinkle. Amphibians, like frogs, can sleep with their eyes open but their pupils rotated upward, so the colored iris covers the pupil. It's a built-in privacy screen. So while they look awake, they're actually in frog nap mode. Creepy, efficient. You're curled up now, in the Devonian dusk, surrounded by reed-like plants and buzzing insects the size of candy bars. You're a half fish, half amphibian, your body uncertain, your lungs wheezy. You feel sleep knocking, but it's different now. It's not just a rest, it's a retreat, a decision. Because above the water, sleep becomes a risk and a ritual. You squish your way onto dry land, your lungs catching the thick, unfamiliar air. The Carboniferous period has arrived, and the Earth is a hothouse-dense jungles, muggy swamps, and dragonflies the size of falcons. Trees tower like green cathedrals. The oxygen level is so high, you half expect the air itself to burst into flame. Life has truly taken root on land now, and with it comes a new challenge. How and where to sleep when the ground itself is alive? Gone are the quiet, drifting dozes of underwater life. On land, everything that rests does so with intention. You're no longer buoyed by water, so lying down is a deliberate act. Muscles sag, limbs fold, breathing slows. Sleep has to be earned with effort and protected with vigilance. Take the early tetrapods, amphibian-like creatures that wriggled through dense undergrowth and shallow ponds. They probably rested in damp hollows beneath ferns, skin slick and lungs pumping. These creatures couldn't afford deep sleep for long stretches, not with predators prowling above and below. Sleep likely came in short bursts, timed with temperature dips or shifts in light. The world was a living alarm clock. And while we don't have fossilized dreams to go by, we do have clues from today's amphibians. Many frogs and salamanders have sleep patterns that match this ancient template. Short, variable, and often controlled by moisture levels. If the air dries out too much, they simply don't sleep. Survival first, dreams later. Historians still argue whether these early land vertebrates developed anything resembling our modern sleep, cycle-slight sleep, deep sleep, remor if their rest resembled something more primitive, a kind of metabolic dimming without much narrative. Did they dream of bugs, of wetter days, of nothing at all? Meanwhile, the trees are also finding their rhythm. They don't sleep in the way you do, but they do respond to day and night. Some fold their leaves, some slow their growth. Some even emit different chemical signals depending on the hour. A forest in the Carboniferous isn't just a backdrop, it's a pulsing, breathing symphony of rest and readiness. Your quirky tidbit for the night? Some modern plants like legumes actually sleep. Their leaves droop or curl up at night and reopen at dawn. This behavior, called nyctinasty, is governed by circadian rhythms, just like your own sleep-wake cycle. Imagine lying beneath a prehistoric bean plant as it softly folds itself shut above you, tucking you in with its leaves. But the real sleep revolution in this era belongs to the insects. Bugs rule the Carboniferous. They buzz, chirp, and creep across every surface. Giant millipedes, the length of canoes, curl into tight spirals when the sun sets. Mayflies, poor tragic mayflies, live only a day, and if they sleep at all, it's barely worth mentioning. Just one blink, and they're gone. Still, modern insect studies show us that some bugs do, in fact, sleep. Fruit flies experience sleep rebound if you keep them awake. They'll crash later. Bees can suffer from sleep deprivation. Even humble cockroaches have activity rhythms that resemble sleep stages. So it's not absurd to imagine these ancient six-legged rulers taking tiny naps under bark or fern fronds, their antennae twitching in dusty dreams. And then, reptiles arrive. Now, things get serious. Reptiles don't need to stay damp. They can travel farther. They sunbathe. They build burrows. And crucially, they find dark, quiet places to rest. This allows sleep to deepen. Their body temperatures drop, their awareness fades, and they stay still for hours. This is no longer just dozing, this is full body, full brain disengagement. Modern reptiles like lizards and turtles experience slow wave sleep. Some even show patterns that hint at REM phases. A 2016 study on bearded dragons found alternating brain activity during sleep, something surprisingly close to human sleep cycles. So the roots of your own dreaming mind may stretch back to a scaly ancestor curled beneath a log during the Carboniferous twilight. And let's not forget eggs. Reptiles lay them, and that changes everything. With eggs, babies can develop out of water, in safe, hidden nests. And while we don't know if reptile embryos sleep, we do know that in birds and mammals, both descended from reptiles' fetal sleep patterns, are real and measurable. So maybe, just maybe, tiny reptilian dreams stirred inside leathery shells 300 million years ago. You tuck yourself into a hollow log, surrounded by moss and mushrooms, your skin cooling with the night. The insects hush, the ferns settle, a dense mist begins to gather, silvering everything. Your heart slows, your thoughts unravel. Somewhere in the darkness, a reptile blinks one last time and lets sleep take over. And on that gentle breath, the history of dreaming takes its next step. You wake with a start, though there's no alarm, just a flicker of movement in the canopy above and the heavy breath of something nearby. Time has lurched forward again, and the Permian period now stretches out around you. Gone are the tropical swamps of the Carboniferous. The land is drying, cooling, shifting. The Earth is rearranging its continents into one vast, cracked supercontinent called Pangaea, and life is adjusting, sometimes beautifully, sometimes brutally. The forests have thinned into scrublands and deserts. You move through dusty canyons and rocky plateaus, sidestepping the twisted roots of now extinct seed ferns and catching glimpses of creatures that look like badly designed prototypes, some halfway between reptiles and mammals, with sprawling legs, odd teeth, and distant eyes. These are synapsids, your ancestors, believe it or not. And they are learning how to nap like pros. Take Dimetrodon with its sprawling gait and iconic sailback. It's not quite a reptile, not yet a mammal, but it was likely cold-blooded, meaning it basked in the sun and probably slowed down significantly at night. When temperatures dropped and danger rose, it would crawl into a burrow, curl its stubby limbs beneath its body, and rest. No deep REM dreams of chasing prey through the savannah just yet, but there was surely a basic neural rhythm to its downtimes, low, steady, and undisturbed unless someone tried to make it dinner. Quirky fact: that sail on Dimetrodon's back? It might have acted like a solar panel, helping the animal heat up after a long, cool sleep. Basically, the Permian version of hitting snooze until your coffee kicks in. As the climate worsened and the air grew more arid, animals were forced to become better sleepers, not longer sleepers necessarily, but more efficient ones. Sleep had to fit into ever-shortening windows between temperature spikes, food scarcity, and increasingly predatory competition. You start to see the roots of torpor and hibernation ways for the body to hit pause during the worst conditions. One of your distant cousins, Thrinaxodon, shows up toward the end of this period. It's a small, shrew-like synapsid with a clever solution. It digs. Fossils show it living in burrows, sometimes with others. And guess what? There's even evidence that one Thrinaxodon died mid-nap fossilized, while curled up in classic sleep posture, tail tucked, paws folded, snout resting against its flank. That's a death pose any house cat would admire. Historians still argue whether this cozy positioning proves a consistent sleep behavior or just a final moment of rest, but it's tempting to imagine these ancient creatures curling up each night in warm tunnels, dozing as sandstorms raged above. Now, While most creatures were refining the art of getting just enough rest to survive, plants were playing their own long game. Permian flora had to deal with less water, harsher sun, and nutrient-poor soils. Many evolved hardier seeds and slower growth cycles. Their sleep, if you can call it that, was more like strategic withdrawal, shutting down during droughts or cold spells, only to reawaken when conditions improved. And then, with barely a warning sigh, the Permian ends badly. The Great Dying arrives like a nightmare. Around 252 million years ago, volcanic activity in Siberia spews enough carbon into the atmosphere to cook the planet. Temperatures spike, oxygen levels drop, oceans acidify. Over 90% of species go extinct. You don't sleep through this. Nobody does. You crouch under an ashen sky, eyes stinging, lungs tight. Even the soil smells wrong. Insects vanish, plants wilt, forests fall silent. What sleep happens now is ragged, desperate, shallow. The world isn't resting, it's barely clinging on. Your quirky tidbit? Some scientists think it got so hot during this extinction, even to over 50 degrees Celsius, 122 degrees Fahrenheit, in some regions, that the very idea of mammalian sleep as we know it couldn't have functioned. Bodies simply couldn't cool enough. Imagine tossing and turning for years. But from this disaster, something quietly extraordinary begins to emerge. Tiny, whiskered creatures start scuttling through the shadows. They're warm-blooded noendothermican that changes everything. Internal temperature control means better sleep regulation. Stable metabolisms allow deeper rest, more complex dreams, and perhaps even the formation of consistent circadian rhythms. You follow one of these creatures as it ducks into a burrow, breath steady, body warm. It curls into itself, its tiny heart slowing, but not faltering. It sleeps not because it must hide, but because its brain and body demand time to process, grow, and reset. This is where you start to recognize yourself. The line between reptile and mammal is blurring, and in that blur, sleep begins to resemble something familiar. Not just an off switch, but a vital rhythm, a healing cycle. A place where memory, imagination, and survival begin to dance. You, too, find a place to hide from the heat. The sky still glows with volcanic haze, but beneath the surface, in the quiet dark, the future of sleep is dreaming itself forward. When the earth finally stops burning, you emerge slowly, carefully, from the burrow-like safety of the shadows. The Triassic period has dawned, around 250 million years ago, and the world is a strange, half-rebuilt version of what came before. The oceans, once choking and acidic, begin to shimmer again. The land is still cracked and scorched, but pockets of green have returned. And walking, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes ominously through this new world, are creatures that will soon dominate every corner of it. Yes, this is the age of the first dinosaurs. But don't worry, they're not the thunderous giants you're imagining just yet. The earliest dinosaurs are small, bipedal, and light-boned, darting between ferns like anxious chickens with lizard faces. They are survivors nimble, alert, and always watching. But what about sleep? Here's where it gets fascinating. Many of these early dinosaurs were likely active at night. Their eye sockets, when analyzed, suggest large pupils capable of dilating in low light. That's a clue that tells you sleep, for these animals, might not have followed the same schedule as ours. In this post-extinction world where food is scarce and predators are evolving fast, some of the smartest creatures are the ones who learn to sleep in shifts. You spot one of them, Eoraptor, no bigger than a border collie, but sleek and fast. It curls beneath a rock outcrop as the red-orange dusk falls. Its flanks rise and fall with a slow breath, and you notice how its limbs tuck under in a way that's oddly cat-like. It sleeps light, ears twitching at every sound. This is not a deep, dreaming sleep, it's survival sleep. Mainstream science still debates whether dinosaurs experienced REM sleep like modern birds, their closest living relatives, or reptiles. Some paleontologists argue that birds inherited their complex sleep patterns, including rapid eye movements and even sleep postures from dinosaur ancestors. Others push back, noting that we simply don't have soft tissue evidence to prove it. So the question hovers, did dinosaurs dream? Quirky twist. Some fossilized dinosaur skeletons have been discovered in sleeping postures. Seriously. Whole clusters of Melonga small feathered dinosaur have been found with their heads tucked under their arms, just like a modern bird. It's tempting to imagine them in quiet slumber, tails curled, safe in nests. And speaking of feathers, yes, they're beginning to show up now. Not just for flight, but possibly for insulation, for courtship, and who knows, maybe even for comfort during sleep. Think prehistoric pajamas. As you tiptoe through Triassic groves, avoiding anything with too many teeth, you stumble across something elsey clutch of eggs. Dinosaurs were devoted parents, at least some of them, and fossilized nests suggest that species like Massospondylus tended their young, possibly even guarding them while they slept. That's one of the earliest signs of sleep protection, an adult giving up its own rest to ensure the safety of its offspring. You duck into the hollow of a fallen tree and sit for a moment. The air is thick with the scent of damp ferns and volcanic ash. It's not peaceful exactly, but there's a rhythm again. Creatures forage and rest, hunt and hide in pulses. The planet is healing, and sleep is once again a reliable thread through the chaos. Above you, the stars have returned familiar, despite the unimaginable gap in time. Maybe this is the first period when animals begin to truly sleep in rhythm with those stars. Circadian cycles, tied to sunlight and shadow, begin to lock into biological clocks. And the mammals? They're still here small, furtive, furry things scampering underfoot, hiding in burrows, climbing through the underbrush. They're nocturnal mostly, living in the margins, away from the dinosaurs' sharp gaze. Their sleep is more consolidated than reptiles, more structured. Already, their brains are rewiring during downtime. You wouldn't recognize their faces yet, but inside, they're becoming you. Historians still argue whether these early mammalian ancestors had dreams, or if dreaming itself only developed when higher cortical functions emerged millions of years later. But there's something in the way these creatures curl into themselves, something in the soft pulse of their breath that feels familiar. Then, a sudden flash of comet streaks across the sky. Not the comet, that one's still millions of years away, but a bright reminder. The universe doesn't care how well you sleep. Cataclysm can strike at any time. But not tonight. Tonight, in the quiet lull of a recovering world, sleep is back. Imperfect, interrupted, but present. And you? You're learning to find pockets of calm in even the wildest worlds. You curl beside a warm stone, watch the treetops sway, and drift off as a nearby Plateosaurus bellows one last time before sleep. Your eyes open gently to a different rhythm now. We've left behind the first tiny dinosaurs and early mammal creatures curled in ferns and buried in sand and drift into the Jurassic some 200 million years ago. The planet is warm and wet, overflowing with life. Giant ferns unfurl like parasols, and the forests echo with the grunts, whistles, and stomping of beasts that now rule land, sea, and sky. You step out of a fern-shadowed thicket, and the landscape widens before you. Sauropods, those impossibly long-necked plant eaters like Brachiosaurus and Apatosaurus graze in slow, swaying rhythms towering above the tree canopy. And though they seem too massive to lie down, they do, occasionally. Their bones, in fact, sometimes show wear from resting positions, elbows, hips, and shoulders pressed into the ground. A dinosaur nap could probably cause a minor earthquake. But what does sleep mean when your head is 2 stories higher than your heart? That's one of the riddles. Paleontologists wonder how these colossal creatures manage circulation, let alone rest. Did they doze standing up like horses? Or collapse fully like birds and lizards, curling their tails protectively? The fossil record offers teasing glimpsessa vertebrae compressed here, a nest bed hollowed there but no single answer. Meanwhile, overhead, the first true birds flap into the blue. Archaeopteryx, a curious blend of teeth, feathers, and claws, flits between trees. This is where things get feathery. Quite literally. Sleep among birds is fascinating, and some behaviors may go all the way back to this point. Birds, for example, can sleep with 1/2 of their brain at a time. Unihemispheric slow-wave sleep, it's called. Ducks do it. Swifts do it mid-air. Possibly, even Archaeopteryx did it, perched high above, one eye closed, the other alert for danger. Down on the forest floor, our warm-blooded cousins are getting clever. Mammals are diversifying. Weaselly shapes, badger-like faces, twitchy noses. And in these creatures, we see the early stages of sleep that more closely resembles our own. Multi-stage cycles, dreams, and extended downtime. As their brains grow more complex, so does the way they rest. For the first time, you see something that looks eerily humana mother curling around her pups, grooming them softly before closing her eyes. And here's the quirky bit. There's a fossil of a Jurassic mammal called Castorocata, a semi-aquatic, beaverish little critter, preserved with fur impressions and even traces of soft tissue. It's one of the first mammals known to have had fur and a tail adapted for swimming. Which means this little guy may have had a circadian rhythm influenced not just by light, but by temperature, tides, and moon phases. Imagine sleeping in sync with the moon. Historians, at least paleobiologists, still argue whether REM sleep, the dreamy rapid eye phase, began here or later. Some suggest the complex behaviors we associate with REM, like emotional memory processing, needed bigger brains and more social interaction than these early mammals had. Others argue that even if dreams weren't vivid, some kind of REM state might have helped wire their brains for survival. You creep closer to a small, burrow-like opening at the base of a tree. Inside, a curled-up pair of Docodona, now extinct mammaliforms, news in tight balls. Their fur glistens faintly in the dim light. You watch as one twitches, perhaps dreaming of insects. The other wakes briefly, blinks groggily, and rests its chin atop the first. It's oddly peaceful here, despite the occasional earth-shaking thud from a distant sauropod or the shriek of a flying reptile overhead. And it's this balance, the ebb and flow between wakefulness and rest, that defines the age. There are predators, yes, and disasters still strike from time to time, but evolution has found a groove again. Life expands. Systems specialize. And sleep evolves to serve more than survival. It now enhances memory, repairs cells, and maybe, just maybe, crafts dreams. You trudge deeper into a piney glade, where a faint steam rises from a hot spring. A small group of feathered theropodsias, technically dinosaurs, but already bird-like, cluster around the warmth. One stands watch. The others huddle close and rest. They chirp softly, an almost melodic cooing, and you wonder, is this the first lullaby? Even the plant life now cycles. Night-blooming flowers release scents only under moonlight. Some ferns furl shut at dusk. The entire forest seems to exhale when the sun sets. And you curl into a hollow beside a fossilizing log, watching the steam curl into a purple sky. For all its strangeness, this Jurassic night is comforting. The sounds of sleep are everywhere. Grumbles, sighs, rustles in the underbrush. And above it all, the stars remain. If anything, they seem closer now. You follow one shooting west, then close your eyes. You probably won't survive what's coming in the next period spoiler. Flying snakes, giant insects, and an extinction level event or two, but for now, in the warm breath of prehistoric night, sleep feels safe again. By the time you lift your head again, the age of giants is winding down. We're entering the Cretaceous, and the world is reshuffling itself. Continents drift apart. Sea levels rise. Ecosystems grow stranger, more diverse, and more dynamic than ever before. If the Jurassic was a symphony of scale and slowness, the Cretaceous is a fever dream of evolution gone wild. You find yourself on the edge of an ancient coastline shallow, warm seas stretching far inland, shimmering under a salmon-pink sky. Palm-like cycads sway in the breeze. Pterosaurs skim the surf, some as small as sparrows, others boasting wingspans bigger than fighter jets. And here, stalking through the mangroves, are the celebrities of this era: the Tyrannosaurus rex, the Triceratops, the duck-billed Edmontosaurus, all destined for extinction. But right now, they rule. Sleep among creatures this size has to be strategic. If you're the apex predator like T-Rex, maybe you can afford a long nap in the sun. Your only real threat is another T-Rex. But even then, you don't want to be caught dozing with your stubby little arms stuck in the air. Evidence from limb joints and nesting sites suggests that even these titans likely curled up to sleep, much like modern birds. In fact, some fossilized theropods were found preserved in roosting positions, legs tucked, tail wrapped, head under wing. It's oddly endearing. And birds? Oh yes, birds are thriving. They're still evolving alongside their dino ancestors, and they're getting weirder by the decade. Some grow beaks, some lose teeth, some start diving, some nest in trees. Sleep behaviors among them become more refined, carefully chosen roosts, social sleeping flocks, and possibly even dreaming. Remember that unihemispheric slow-wave sleep we talked about? Now it's practically a superpower. One eye open, one eye closed. Half a brain asleep, the other scanning for danger. You'll never look at a pigeon the same way again. Let's not forget the bugs. The Cretaceous is crawling with enormous insects. Dragonflies the size of dinner plates, beetles with armored backs like medieval helmets, and among them, bees. Yes, bees. They emerge in this era, buzzing among blooming, flowering plantangiosperms, which have just evolved and are about to change the entire planet's ecology. And fun fact, bees sleep too. You spot one clinging to a petal in the soft dusk, its wings motionless, its tiny head bowed. It's not dead, it's just having a quick power nap. There's a lot of debate about whether REM sleep was present in these non-human lineages. Did a velociraptor dream? Did a crested Parasaurolophus hum lullabies to its young? Scientists have found signs that some modern sleep traits like muscle paralysis during dreaming might have ancestral roots here. But historians still argue whether true dreaming as we know it requires the kind of neocortex only found in mammals. And speaking of mammals, they're having a glow-up. Still small, yes, but clever and fast. Some are nocturnal, some burrowers. Some begin gliding between trees on flaps of skin like flying squirrels. These creatures fine-tune their sleep strategies to avoid predation. Short bursts, deep burrowed nests, elaborate social sleeping dens. And in their sleep, something else begins to evolve: memory consolidation. Studies of modern rodents suggest that complex maze learning and dreaming go hand in hand. Could our little Cretaceous furballs have dreamed of danger, of food, of safety? You rest now beneath a flowering magnolia, its pale blooms releasing a citrusy scent into the dusk. A Leptoceratops dozes beside a stream, its small frilled head resting on folded legs. Across the water, a tiny mammal twitches in its sleep, whiskers quivering. The world, for the moment, is balanced. Life is blooming in every corner, sleep is becoming more complex, and the planet pulses with possibility. But then you feel it, the tension in the air, the sudden quiet. The birds have stopped chirping, the pterosaurs have vanished into the cliffs, even the insects have gone still. You glance up. Something streaks across the sky fast, furious and terrible. You already know what it is. 66 million years ago, a 6-mile-wide asteroid crashes into what will one day be Mexico. The shock waves vaporize forests, boil oceans, and blanket the sky in soot. 3/4 of Earth's species vanish. Dinosaurs, pterosaurs, ammonites, even some early mammals all gone. It is the worst day in Earth's biological history, and nobody sleeps through it. Or do they? One peculiar discovery suggests that some tiny mammals, possibly in deep hibernation, might have weathered the disaster underground. Scientists have debated whether torpor and long-term metabolic shutdowns helped early mammals survive what their larger cousins could not. It's not proven, but it's poetic. Sleep, once a vulnerability, may have become the very thing that ensured survival. So you huddle close to the earth now, your ears filled with the groan of the dying world, and wonder, what does it take to sleep through an apocalypse? You probably won't. But some little creature will, and from its dreams, a new era will rise. Dust still hangs in the air, thick and sunless, as if the sky itself forgot how to wake up. The aftermath of the impact isn't just deadly, it's quiet, hauntingly quiet. You walk through ash-coated ferns and skeletal tree trunks. Nothing chirps, nothing flutters. It's as if the planet has taken a long, grieving breath and fallen asleep. But not everything is gone. Among the ruins, small shapes rustle. In the undergrowth, tucked into burrows and crevices, are survivors. Shrews, opossum-like mammals, amphibians that burrowed deep enough, fish that kept to dark, cold rivers. Some insects made it. So did turtles and crocodilians, cold-blooded, patient, slow to starve. It's not glamorous, but survival rarely is. It's damp, dark, and hungry. And for these species, sleep becomes not just a necessity but a gamble. Do you sleep and conserve energy? Or stay awake and forage in the dying light? Take torpor, for example, a kind of temporary hibernation where an animal slows everything down. Breathing, heartbeat, temperature. You'd think it's a winter trick, but it likely evolved as a response to starvation and stress long before snow was a concern. Some paleontologists believe early mammals may have dipped into torpor during the post-impact freeze, waiting for the dust to settle literally. Historians still argue whether the rise of mammalian dominance was due to this adaptability or just lucky timing. Regardless, you press on. The Paleocene dawns, slowly shaky, raw, like Earth learning to breathe again. Forests regrow, warmth returns, insects multiply. And with the big reptiles mostly out of the picture, mammals stretch out. They get bigger, bolder. Some move into trees, others take to the plains. No more hiding. The world is theirs now. And as mammals diversify, so does sleep. You come across a lemur-like primate perched in a fig tree, its tail curled tight, eyes closed in midday slumber. It's an ancestor of something astonishingus. These early primates start developing bigger brains, better vision, and perhaps more nuanced sleep cycles. REM sleep likely becomes more prominent. Some researchers speculate that in these brainy creatures, dreaming may begin to play a deeper role in memory, creativity, even social behavior. You lie beside one of them in the crook of a tree branch. The jungle breathes around you wet leaves, buzzing insects, the distant croak of something large and unseen. This primate is dreaming. Its fingers twitch, its eyelids flutter, and as you watch, it's hard not to wonder what images flit through its mind. Shadows of predators? The shape of a ripe fruit? Maybe the warm weight of another primate curled beside it? Elsewhere, some mammals take to burrowing. Picture the multi-tubercula testini, rodent-like creatures with strange, complex teeth. Long gone now, but at the time, absolutely thriving. They lived in elaborate tunnel systems and likely slept in communal heaps like modern mole rats do. Safety in numbers, warmth in shared nests, and probably a rich tradition of sleep farting if we're being honest. Mammals aren't always elegant. Quirky fact, fossil evidence suggests some early mammals evolved spines specifically designed for Kurlangan adaptation for both defense and comfortable napping. Priorities. Meanwhile, the ocean is reinventing itself again. Marine mammals begin to appear whale ancestors who still look more like wolves with flippers. These creatures will one day learn to sleep while swimming, keeping part of their brain alert so they don't drown. But for now, they're clumsy land lovers, awkward and sleepy in the surf. Night comes, and the Paleocene fades into the Eocene time of heat and abundance. Forests cover most of the Earth. It's so warm that crocodiles live in the Arctic. Seriously. And animals get weirdly specialized. Long-legged tree runners, early horses the size of cats, bats that try gliding, and strange mammals like the Andrewsarchusa wolf-faced, pig-bodied horror that likely didn't sleep gently. Primates continue climbing the evolutionary ladder. They develop depth perception, better hands, and complex social bonds, all of which influence how, where, and with whom they sleep. Modern monkeys and apes often nest nightly, building sleeping platforms in trees to keep them safe from snakes, ants, and late-night gossip. Researchers studying modern orangutans have found that the more complex their nests, the better they sleep. Some even fold leaves into pillows. Not kidding. One day, that instinct will become your memory foam mattress and Netflix wind-down ritual. Historians still argue whether increased dream complexity in primates was an evolutionary byproduct or a functional advantage. Did we dream more because our brains grew? Or did our brains grow to accommodate the power of dreaming? It's a very chicken or egg kind of debate, except in this case, it's more like monkey or dream? You pause now. Beneath a moonlit canopy thick with prehistoric perfumes, the primates around you rustle in their nests, softly snoring. Somewhere distant, something howls a predator with glowing eyes and very little chill. You pull your leaf blanket tighter. For a brief moment, this feels familiar. Not ancient, not alien, but deeply, almost ancestrally, human. The world is becoming recognizably ours now. Slowly. Sleep is no longer just a pause. It's a practice, a preference, a pattern. And it's only going to get stranger from here. You wake to the dawn chorus of early primates, their calls weaving through the humid forest like a slow, deliberate hymn to survival. Life is no longer just about hiding or fleeing, it's about navigating complex social networks, hierarchies, and alliances. Sleep, once a vulnerable lapse, is becoming a nuanced behavior shaped by community and environment. In this verdant world, the first hominins begin to take shape. Imagine small, curious creatures stepping down from the trees, eyes scanning the horizon for food and danger. They don't yet carry fire or tools, but their brains are growing, and so is their need for more sophisticated rest. Extended periods of REM sleep may help with memory, consolidation, learning, and problem-solving skills, vital for those who will one day craft stone tools and cook their meals. You settle beside a fire pit freshly kindled, embers glowing amber in the pre-dawn gloom. The scent of smoke is foreign yet oddly comforting. Fire changes everything. It extends waking hours, offers protection from predators, and introduces new rituals like communal storytelling and the beginnings of nighttime social bonding. Yet, firelight also disrupts natural rhythms, challenging the ancestral sleep cycles that had evolved over millennia. Historians still argue whether controlled use of fire led to shorter sleep durations or simply altered sleep patterns to include lighter, more fragmented rest. It's a delicate trade-off. The benefits of extended social time against the costs to deep, restorative sleep. Nearby, a group of early humans huddle in simple shelters made from branches and animal hides, their faces painted with ochre, eyes reflecting flickering flames. Their sleep is wary but necessary, a precious reset in a dangerous world. The night is punctuated by whispered conversations, the crackle of fire, and the distant howl of predators, testing the boundary between safety and threat. You watch as one figure curls beside a pile of animal skins, pulling a woven mat close. They clutch a small wooden talismana, symbol of protection, or perhaps a comfort object, to ease the transition into sleep. The psychological aspect of sleep, the feeling of safety, is becoming increasingly important. Dreams might be influenced by these new cultural elements, intertwining with the spiritual and social life of early humans. Meanwhile, outside the fire's glow, the wilderness hums with life. Insects buzz, owls hoot, and nocturnal mammals scurry. Sleep is no longer an individual act, but a communal event, influenced by environment, technology, and social bonds. Quirky detail. Some anthropologists suggest early humans may have used herbal infusions, like willow bark tea containing salicin, to ease pain or aid sleep. Nature's first aspirin, and maybe the earliest sleep aid. You close your eyes, feeling the warmth of the fire fade as consciousness slips away. The ancestral lullabies of crackling flames and rustling leaves carry you into a dreamscape, still untamed and full of possibility. Somewhere deep within, your mind rehearses the stories and challenges of a world reborn. Sleep is evolving, just like you. You find yourself amid the rise of early agriculture, where the dawn breaks over fields just beginning to yield their first crops. The transition from foraging to farming shifts the rhythm of life and sleep with profound consequences. No longer nomadic, communities settle into villages tethered to the cycles of planting and harvest, day length, and seasons. Imagine waking to the crowing of roosters and the scent of freshly turned earth, the air cool and thick with promise. Farming requires early rising and long days of labor, but also a new kind of rest, scheduled, communal, and bound to the rhythms of cultivated land. Sleep begins to synchronize more rigidly with daylight hours, yet the demands of tending crops and guarding granaries often fragment nights. You watch as a farmer, clad in a simple indigo tunic, drapes a woven straw hat over her head to shield from the midday sun. then carries a basket brimming with grains to a wooden granary. Nearby, children run between mud brick homes, chasing each other with laughter that breaks the stillness. Evenings draw people together around hearth fires, sharing stories and songs that trace their roots back through countless generations. Historians still argue whether the advent of agriculture caused a net decrease in sleep duration or merely altered its structure to accommodate the new lifestyle. Some anthropologists point out that farming life brought the first instances of segmented sleep to distinct periods of rest separated by wakefulness, while others suggest the communal demands simply shifted sleep later into the night. You imagine the first people to build beds of woven reeds and animal pelts, layered with scented herbs like lavender or chamomile, perhaps to encourage peaceful sleep and ward off pests. These small comforts hint at an emerging awareness of sleep's value beyond mere survival. Quirky tidbit: in some early farming communities, people used dream interpretation as a form of decision-making, believing that dreams were messages from the earth or ancestors, guiding when to plant or harvest. As dusk falls, you see families settle down beneath star-studded skies, their faces lit by the soft glow of oil lamps. The night is both a time for rest and for reflection, a pause before the cycle of work begins anew with the morning sun. You feel the weight of these early innovations, the way human ingenuity shaped not just the world but the very patterns of sleep, weaving culture and biology into a shared tapestry of rest and renewal. Sleep here is no longer just a pause, it's a ritual, a bridge between day's labor and night's restoration. The night deepens, and you step into the grand courts of medieval Europe, where sleep takes on new social meanings under flickering candlelight and towering tapestries. Nobles recline on ornately carved wooden beds, draped in richly colored fabrics, deep indigo velvets, russet silks, and saffron damasks, while servants move quietly to stoke the hearth fires and prepare night rituals. You watch a lord settle beneath heavy blankets embroidered with gold thread, his face a mixture of weariness and relief, knowing that sleep here is both a necessity and a luxury. The rhythmic tapping of a servant's wooden clogs on stone floors, the faint scent of lavender from a nearby sachet, and the distant hoot of an owl outside the castle walls frame a moment of fragile peace. But sleep in these grand halls is often interrupted by the need for evening prayers, the creak of heavy shutters, or the arrival of a late visitor bearing urgent news. In fact, many medieval people practiced what modern historians call segmented sleep, breaking the night into two distinct periods of rest separated by an hour or more of quiet wakefulness. You glimpse this quiet hour as a time for reflection, prayer, or intimate conversation by candlelight. Perhaps a noblewoman reads from a small illuminated manuscript, her delicate fingers tracing gilded letters, or a troubadour softly strums a lute, his song weaving through the night. Historians still debate how widespread segmented sleep really was, and whether it reflected necessity, culture, or simply the way human sleep naturally unfolds without artificial light. A quirky tidbit: some medieval people believed that sleepwalking was a sign that the soul was wandering, and elaborate rituals existed to protect sleepers from mischievous spirits. You notice how practical items like wooden buckets filled with water stood ready by bedsides to quench midnight thirst or douse fire embers, while wicker baskets held nightclothes and small personal treasures. The intimacy of these nighttime routines reflects an intricate balance between vulnerability and security. As you let your eyes wander over richly decorated bed hangings, tiny gilded flourishes on pillows, and the flickering glow of candle sconces, you sense that sleep here is not merely biological, but woven tightly into the social fabric of medieval life, an art of rest, ritual, and whispered dreams beneath stone arches. The night's hush deepens, and you prepare to leave these chambers, carrying with you the knowledge that even in ages past, the quest for peaceful sleep has always been a complex dance of light, shadow, and human habit. You drift from the medieval halls into the wide-open deserts of the ancient Sahara, where night blankets a very different kind of world vast, star-studded and silent, except for the whisper of shifting sands. Here, under an endless canopy of twinkling constellations, sleep is less a routine and more a survival tactic, shaped by the fierce sun and freezing desert nights. Imagine the Tuareg nomads, cloaked in deep indigo robes that shimmer faintly under the moonlight, gathering around small fires and settling into tightly woven mats made of palm fibers. Their faces, partly hidden by flowing veils, reveal eyes sharp with the wisdom of centuries spent reading the desert's subtle signs. These desert dwellers sleep lightly, always alert to the faintest change a gust of wind, the distant howl of a jackal that might signal danger or opportunity. Their nights are punctuated by oral poetry and music, songs that carry the melancholy and joy of a life lived in rhythm with the sand and stars. You might hear the soft pluck of a one-stringed instrument or the gentle beat of hand drums, melodies that help ease the mind and summon restful dreams despite the chill. Water is a precious treasure here, carried in wooden buckets and stored carefully, its scarcity shaping not just daily life, but nightly rest. Sleeping near an oasis palm grove brings a rare comfort, the rustling fronds whispering lullabies that mingle with the desert silence. Historians still argue how nomadic lifestyles have evolved in response to climate changes and modern pressures. But one thing is clear: resilience and adaptation are the desert's true constants. A quirky detail for you Tuareg warriors once carried intricate leather saddlebags called aigles that held not only necessities but talismans believed to protect their dreams from restless spirits. As you feel the cool desert air and see the stars reflected in dark eyes, you understand that sleep here is woven tightly into the fabric of survival, storytelling, and ancient wisdom, a living link between past and present beneath the Sahara's eternal sky. You now move from the deep desert night to the bustling, sun-drenched markets of Timbuktu, where the ancient world's riches and stories swirl amidst the scent of spices and the hum of traders' voices. Here, the day stretches long and warm, and sleep comes later often stolen in brief moments beneath brightly woven tents or on simple mats shaded by palm fronds. Picture merchants wrapped in saffron and russet tunics, their faces weathered by Sahara winds, exchanging goods like salt, gold, and manuscripts. Their eyes glint with the knowledge of centuries, carrying traditions that have survived droughts, invasions, and shifting empires. Even amid the chaos, the rhythms of rest and work intertwine afternoon naps after heavy meals, quiet conversations whispered as twilight falls. Children dart through narrow alleys, their laughter ringing out like bright bells, while elders sit calmly beside earthenware pots, sipping bitter tea and recounting tales of desert spirits and heroes. The palm groves nearby offer cool refuge, their shade a natural lullaby coaxing tired bodies to rest. Traditional practices for predicting weather and locating water remain vital here, passed down in hushed tones and practiced with reverence, a reminder that sleep and survival have always been entwined in this place. Historians still debate how much the intellectual wealth of Timbuktu influenced wider Africa and Europe, but there's no doubt it nurtured minds and bodies alike. A charming tidbit: some traders kept tiny, hand-carved wooden amulets believed to guard against bad, dream-simple objects carrying deep spiritual meaning. As the sun dips low and lanterns flicker to life, you sense the pulse of a living culture. where sleep is woven between the threads of commerce, community, and enduring desert spirit. The night deepens once more as you imagine the Tuareg people, known as the Blue Men of the Desert, cloaked in indigo robes that shimmer against the endless sand. Their faces are wrapped in veils, eyes sharp and steady, reflecting centuries of nomadic wisdom under the vast Sahara sky. They move like shadows over rolling dunes, guided by stars and a profound understanding of the desert's moods. The Tuareg songs drift softly through the night ere melancholic melodies that tell of love, loss, and survival, their rhythms echoing the shifting sands beneath their feet. Their oral poetry is a living archive, preserving ancient history and cultural identity in the very cadence of their voices. It's a delicate balance of joy and sorrow, resilience and reverence. You picture a small campfire flickering amid palm trees at an oasis, where families gather wrapped in woven blankets dyed with saffron and russet hues. There, elders share stories beneath a tapestry of stars, and young children listen wide-eyed, lulled by the gentle crackle of flames and the desert's whispering winds. The Tuaregs' traditional knowledge how to find hidden wells, read weather signs, and conserve precious water has allowed them to thrive despite harsh conditions. Historians still debate how globalization and climate change will alter these nomadic lifestyles in coming decades, but the spirit of adaptation runs deep. And a light-hearted moment. Why did the desert nomad bring a ladder? To reach new heights 7 if only a towering sand dune. As your thoughts settle, you feel the Sahara not as a barren wasteland, but as a living story of transformation, survival, and surprising beauty. The desert winds carry ancient lullabies, inviting you to breathe deeply, relax, and drift gently across the green Sahara that once was.